Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another fabulous Friday Ramblings, where we discuss everything pop culture that is interesting to discuss. We're going to go ahead and, in light of the fact that WWE is putting on its most recent Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in a matter of only a few days, decide to go back to the match itself that the pay-per-view is named from, and while we're not going to go through every single Hell in a Cell there has been, we are going to highlight my personal favorite Hell in a Cell matches. First, for the uninitiated, what is a Hell in a Cell match? Hell in a Cell match is an idea that was generally credited to Jim Cornette, who at the time was working for the WWE booking team, or on the booking team, in which they took the basic idea of a steel cage match, which I'm sure everybody knows because it's an iconic match type that's been around for many, many decades in professional wrestling, but give it a twist by incorporating a few different cell variants into one. Specifically taking the roof from the War Game matches, which were traditionally 5-on-5 two-ring team matches, but using it for the one-on-one match in a single ring they wanted to do, but also bringing about a variant steel cage match that they would do in the old NWA, where instead of the cage being attached directly to the side of the ring like this, it actually extended past the ring and sat on the floor, which allowed people to fight between the cage and the ring, as well as allow cameramen to film from inside the cage so that people watching at home could see the action without seeing it through the cage. And that's your basics of your Hell in a Cell. It is billed as the ultimate enclosed structure in WWE, and was originally used for singles matches, although that has changed a bit over the years, which we will discuss. Now, originally Hell in a Cell was done sporadically on different pay-per-views and a few times on television, specifically Monday Night Raw. However, after a few years, they gave it its own pay-per-view, in which it is the only night of the year in which WWE does the Hell in a Cell match. So, there's your quick breakdown. So let's go through a list of Hell in a Cell matches that I've always enjoyed watching and rewatching and rewatching. First, we got to go with the original, and that is from Bad Blood in Your House, in which Shawn Michaels took on The Undertaker. Now, this was the second match in a series of 3 matches that Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker had over about a 5-month period, stemming from Shawn Michaels costing Undertaker the title at SummerSlam. First match was at Ground Zero. It was originally supposed to be a standard rules match, but with the interference of Shawn Michaels' buddies Triple H and Chyna, and the fact that the match descended into just absolute pure chaos in which nobody was listening to the referee, the match was thrown out. Now, 90% of the time, when a pay-per-view main event ends with the match being thrown out and no real winner, and in all honesty, the match actually never officially starting in any noticeable capacity, fans would get ticked off. But because the chaos of it all still lasted about the same length as a standard rules match, instead of it just being an excuse to have like a 3-minute main event type thing, and because Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Triple H, and Chyna just put on such a great performance, nobody really objected to it. It's a, in and of itself, it's a great match. Especially if you're going to go back and watch the original Hell in a Cell match, you should watch this match as well, to see the situation that in storyline led to WWE wanting to create a structure like Hell in a Cell. Something that would go above and beyond the standard steel cage in isolating Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, while also giving them carte blanche to be as violent with each other as they wanted to be. So we have the original Hell in a Cell at the pay-per-view aptly named Bad Blood. This match set the standard not just for future Shawn Michael Undertaker encounters, including their two iconic WrestleMania matches, but set the standard for all Hell in a Cell matches to follow, including things like Shawn Michaels managing to escape the cage when it was open to allow a cameraman out after he had gotten caught up in the action and injured. Shawn attempted to climb the wall of the cage and was yanked off it by The Undertaker, leading to a tradition in Hell in a Cells of big falls. Though many were bigger than Shawn Michaels, but again, that's the whole point. Bad kitty. We're not having a fight with you even though we're talking about wrestling. That's what you get when you do things live in one shot, folks. And when you have a happy kitty around. But yes, the Shawn Michaels Undertaker match was full of violence, blood, and ended in a way nobody saw coming, where despite getting battered, bruised, and wrecked by The Undertaker throughout the match, Shawn managed to win when the debuting Cain appeared and ripped off the door to the cell so that he could enter and lay out the surprised Undertaker. Cain, of course, would go on to have a very long career with WWE and has been inducted into their Hall of Fame now that he is retired and spending his time as mayor of Knox County. So, good props to him. Highly recommended match. If you've never seen a Hell in a Cell before, go ahead and start with the original because, hey, as I've said, when you have Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker fighting each other, it's a guaranteed good time. These are two of the best of all time, and they let it all hang out in order to make this gimmick prove it was worth the investment. Next up is the one most people think of when they think of iconic early Hell in a Cell matches, and that is The Undertaker versus Mankind at King of the Ring. Now, over the years, I've come to have a mixed opinion of this match. The truth is, if you judge the entire thing as just a straight-up match, it's not a very good match. And the reason being, early on, one of the most famous spots in wrestling history took place in which Mankind climbed to the top of the cell. Undertaker chased him, and outdoing Shawn Michaels' fall from the top of the side, Undertaker had Mankind throw him off the cell itself, crashing through the announce table, and, as I said, creating one of the most famous spots in wrestling history. They would then tease the idea that the match was over from there, mere minutes after it started, with Mankind being led out on a stretcher, although almost immediately upon disappearing, he returned determined to fight The Undertaker, cementing the fact that he is one of the toughest SOBs in professional wrestling. Unfortunately, from there, the two ended up back on the top of the cell, and in an unplanned moment, Mankind was chokeslammed through the cell, landing in the ring with the steel chair that had been up on top landing on Mankind seconds after he hit the ring and was not ready for it because this was all unplanned. He was supposed to get chokeslammed top of the cell, but the theory was that the cell would hold his weight. The cell paneling actually completely gave way. This caused Mankind to suffer a hard concussion, and he had to be walked through the rest of the match by The Undertaker. Mankind claimed years later, when he was writing his autobiography, that he actually had to go back and rewatch the match because he has no memories of it. Concussion was so bad that, I mean, as I said, years later, he has no recollection of the match. He knows it happened because he's seen the video, but even watching it, he has no emotional connection to the moments. His brain has a blank spot, just poof, big old zero, where his memory of the match should be, so he doesn't really connect with it like he does his other big matches. That is extremely scary to think about. But most importantly, the fact that since he did get legitimately knocked out, they had to go through yet another stalling tactics piece, including Mick Foley's real-life best friend and part-time tag partner, Terry Funk, at that time going by the name Chainsaw Charlie, coming out to the ring and taking a couple big spots from The Undertaker himself as people made sure Mick was still alive, let alone capable of finishing the match. So, yes, it is an extremely famous match. You know, it is something people should watch, mostly to learn, you know, that how to tell when somebody is not actually mentally aware of what's going on, because, you know, first time you watch it, fact is, Mankind and Undertaker do a pretty good job of faking the fact Mankind's brain wasn't there. And it seems like a pretty decent match, all things considered. When you know the truth of what was going on behind the scenes with the match, the whole thing basically turns into a safety video of, look, you can't trust a guy when he's gotten a headshot like that to know what's best for him in the moment. He's going to tell you, oh yeah, let me keep taking bumps. Let me take a choke slam and a tombstone pile driver and other things that are going to involve my skull doing that some more. You know, it's watching back, knowing what we know now about how the brain deals with damage and the fact that a lot of that damage never goes away and accumulates over time. It's a very scary match to watch. You know, I can rewatch it, but I rewatch it more as a cautionary thing. Like, God, like, ew, this is stuff people should never redo. Fortunately, a lot of people think they can redo it. I'm going to go ahead and lay this out real quick, folks. You can respect Mick Foley. I respect the hell out of him as a professional. Do not ever emulate Mick Foley and his career and his bumps. The man was genetically built to take more shock damage than most human bodies can, and even he is still not in good condition at his age. Like, when he guest stars on WWE for these, like, you know, legend comeback stuff, or they do a documentary, even though in his later years of his career, the last year or so of his career, full-time wrestling career, watch just how he walks to the ring. He wasn't putting on a show at that point. The man physically, for years, could not stand up straight and walk forward like a normal human being does. I don't know. It's a whole nother thing. Now, the next major recommended Hell in a Cell also features Mankind under his Mick Foley, well, not as Mick Foley, but as Mick Foley changed gimmicks over to his classic ECW, WCW gimmick of Cactus Jack to take on the champion Triple H at No Way Out. This would be the first time Triple H was in a cell match. He would feature in many more. And the two of them put on a clinic involving, for the first time in Hell in a Cell, almost as many weapon shots as cell spots. You know, they had barbed wire 2x4s. I mean, it was basically a street fight inside a cage. It's an incredibly brutal match. One of those things that, since it was early into Triple H's run as a main eventer, cemented his status as a main event wrestler in WWE. It was like, yeah, this guy, what him and Mick did to each other, and, you know, how much more brutal they made it look than it was. And I mean, it physically hurt. Let's not deny that. Wrestling does hurt. But just the story they told in that match and the way they sold the damage that they needed you to believe in. You know, you believe these guys were trying to kill each other for the right to be champion. And that's everything pro wrestling's supposed to be. Highly recommended match. Thankfully, not any potentially lethal falls in this one. We have, from the Armageddon pay-per-view, the first 6-man match inside Hell in a Cell, where champion Kurt Angle defended his title against The Undertaker, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and Rikishi. Now, this was kind of an oddball match. It was the first time that they had done a multi-man, everybody for themselves style match in Hell in a Cell, and the fact that it involved basically their entire main event roster at that point. It's a good match because of that many people involved. They were able to do some big spots and have people sell damage from those spots properly without there being a long break in the action. So it's a very intense, action-packed Hell in a Cell. It's not my favorite, but it has some wonderful moments, and it was great to see guys like Rikishi have a rare shot to main event a pay-per-view, as well as seeing, as I said, I mean, you had The Undertaker, Stone Cold, The Rock. I mean, just everybody that was a big name at that time practically in WWE, just all beating the snot out of each other at one time. So a wonderful way to cap off a great year in wrestling. As this was a December pay-per-view. And it really helps cement the fact that when you want intense violence, Hell in a Cell is the way to go. About a year and a half after that, we had Triple H fighting Chris Jericho at Judgment Day. Chris Jericho's first entry into the Cell, part of the extended Triple H-Chris Jericho feud. We're back to singles action. It's a great match that further cements the fact that Triple H deserved to continue to main event pay-per-views year after year, as well as elevating Chris Jericho and demonstrating his future potential as a WWF champion. This was a match in which Jericho proved he could hang as Triple H started becoming the guy that you had to prove you were just as good as if you wanted to keep being in the main event. Several months later, Brock Lesnar fights The Undertaker in an early match in their on-again, off-again rivalry, based off the fact that in real life, Undertaker and Brock Lesnar got along and respected the hell out of each other as professionals. As such, they always enjoyed fighting each other at pay-per-views. This was very early into Brock Lesnar's first run in WWE, and much like Chris Jericho, this was a match where Brock demonstrated that he truly could wrestle any kind of match against any opponent and look like he deserved to be there as much as anybody else. The fact that he won the match at a time when, yeah, beating The Undertaker at pay-per-view was not something a lot of people did, proved that the next big thing had arrived. And we've got some good Hell in a Cells after this, but as far as my personal recommendations go, we're going to skip a few of them, and we're going to go to The Undertaker versus Randy Orton. Undertaker and Randy Orton had a multi-month feud where they involved casket matches. We had some handicap matches with Randy Orton's retired father, Cowboy Bob Orton, involved. But the Hell in a Cell match was my personal favorite from it, as it was an early example of how sadistic and brutal Randy Orton could be. He had already shown his stripes as the Legend Killer, but this was where the legend of the Viper first really began, as Orton showed he could be as cruel and mean-spirited as The Undertaker inside hell. So, if you are a Randy Orton fan, this is a must-see match. We've got some other great Hell in a Cells. Again, I don't want to name every one of them, and I want to just give praise to The Undertaker. Quick basic summary, though, is anytime Undertaker's in Hell in a Cell, it's a match worth watching. I'm just going to name off some real quick ones. He had a match with Batista. He had a great match with Edge. He had a really solid match with CM Punk at the first Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in 2009. Same pay-per-view also had, which in my opinion was the more historically noteworthy match of Randy Orton defeating John Cena. As this was John Cena's first Hell in a Cell match, I do believe. Yep, this was John Cena's first Hell in a Cell match. As I said, it was the original Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, and it was one of the many matches in the very deep Randy Orton-John Cena feud, and with Orton being the one who had already been in Hell in a Cell, one of their better matches. John was still proving himself as a guy that could be thrown in any match and still main event for good reasons at this point. So him mixing it up with his favorite rival showed, hey, nothing holds John Cena back. Whether that's your personal preference or not, it's up to you as a fan. One of my personal favorites, Sheamus, shows up a year later to take on Randy Orton once again inside Hell in a Cell. Well, at the same event, Cain and The Undertaker reignited their on-again, off-again rivalry, taking it into Hell in a Cell, which was kind of amusing as you figure, hey, it's what? See, this was in 2010, 97. So, yeah. 13 years after Cain debuts, by interfering in Undertaker's original Hell in a Cell match, The Undertaker finally officially gets Cain inside Hell in a Cell. Kind of poetic. Very literarily appropriate. It would not be the final encounter between Cain and The Undertaker, but it would be one of their most memorable, as the devil's favorite demon and the man that rules the dark side went at it like only half brothers can, in an environment that was as brutal as anything that had existed in any plane of existence. Whew. We're not 6-man, but we got 5-mans going up. In a rare instant of a Hell in a Cell match off television, a Raw Dark match featured John Cena defeating Alberto Del Rio, CM Punk, Dolph Ziggler, and Jack Swagger. Now, this is the only match on the list that I have not personally seen because it was a dark match and I did not attend it live, but I am throwing it out there for historical significance that they have actually done Hell in a Cell as a treat just for the local fans who attended a live show. Because, hey, that's the kind of trivia thing you can really stump your friends at. Hey, who competed in the only Hell in a Cell dark match in WWE existence? Those 5 men. Oh. And now we come to, again, one of those that if you're a wrestling fan, you have to see. And that is the WrestleMania encounter between Undertaker and Triple H at Hell in a Cell with Shawn Michaels as a special guest referee. Now, this was a match with a lot of story behind it, as The Undertaker had previously retired Shawn Michaels 2 years before. The year before, Undertaker and Triple H fought in a standard rules contest in which, while Undertaker technically won, he was unable to leave the ring without help due to how exhausted he was from the match. This was an extremely rare, basically unheard of idea from The Undertaker that he could win the match, but in a Pyrrhic victory sense. Or Pyrrhic. Pyrrhic. However you choose to pronounce that. But it was a win where the cost was too much to bear. So a year later, The Undertaker demands Triple H fight him in an environment that these two had been in more often than any other wrestler, so The Undertaker could get the definitive victory. Having Shawn Michaels as special guest referee added that level of, is this going to in fact be a fair match? As well as being the first time that Shawn and Undertaker were inside Hell in a Cell since the original match, even though Shawn himself was not actively wrestling. When it was all said and done, the Dark Man would still reign supreme, and this would serve as the unofficial end to Triple H's full-time wrestling career, as his appearances would start becoming a lot more sporadic after this, as well as signaling the end of an era, as The Undertaker had started becoming part-time, Triple H went part-time. This was, in many ways, the two of them putting on one last match so their generation could pass the torch to the next generation. Our buddy Randy Orton comes back as he takes on Daniel Bryan as part of their ongoing rivalry throughout 2013 and early 2014, with, once again, Shawn Michaels as special guest referee due to him having been an early trainer of Daniel Bryan. It's a great match in which Daniel Bryan, much like Randy Orton did years before, cements his status as an undisputed main event level talent. Jump forward a couple more years. We're getting down to the end of it, folks. As far as my recommendations go, Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker go back inside Hell in a Cell in 2015, where, once again, Brock Lesnar is triumphant, proving that the man who beat the streak may also be, and again, I can set some of my statistics, loving friends on this, the man who has had the most big match victories against The Undertaker. Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker loved going at each other. Brock Lesnar won a pretty good amount of those encounters. Being able to watch this match, especially right after their one from several years before when Brock was a rookie, is very interesting comparison material. And trust me, both matches are just as hard hitting, despite what Father Time had done to both men. After that, things get a little, that's the problem with a yearly gimmick pay-per-view like Hell in a Cell. Especially when you're having multiple Hell in a Cells at the same pay-per-view, things become formulaic. Now, a lot of folks, you're saying, hey, you're talking about historically important pay-per-views. What about the first female pay-per-view? Okay, look, I'm going to be honest. Yes, there's a handful of Hell in a Cells in which women have competed. Yes, for historical accuracy, the first one was Charlotte Flair versus Sasha Banks. But I'm going to be honest, neither one of them is exactly my favorite wrestler. And frankly, there was some awkward spots and a few botches in this match. It was not the best match these two women had ever had. The booking wasn't the best, as it was basically treated like, oh, hey, we're female competitors. It's the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Of course we're going to be in a Hell in a Cell match. The WWE really failed to make it feel like those women had to be inside Hell in a Cell. It felt like they were doing it just so they could say, yes, we're having the first women's Hell in a Cell match ever. You can watch it for historical sake, but it's not the women's Hell in a Cell match I'm going to recommend. That one would be a few years, let me see. 1 year later, when Becky Lynch, as the Raw Women's Champion, took on Sasha Banks inside Hell in a Cell. This is a much better match. However, bear with me for a second. Between those two, you also had the first Tornado Tag Team match to take place inside Hell in a Cell. Tornado referring to the fact that both members of the team are legal at all times. There's no need to tag in and out. So it was two teams, two men each, beating the holy snot out of each other as the Usos took on the New Day, specifically the New Day pairing of Big E and Xavier Woods. And those two men brought a whole nother level to Hell in a Cell. No, excuse me. I'm going to retract that slightly. It was not the first Tornado Tag match, but it was the first one for the Tag Team Championships. There had been some others. I haven't mentioned them because they tended to involve the McMahon family, and Shane and Vince are not great wrestlers. So, but this is the first time two full-time wrestling tag teams competed for the Tag Team Championship, and the Usos and the New Day are two of the best tag team wrestlers or tag teams of their generation. It is a wonderful match to watch. So, we're pretty much running out of Hell in a Cell matches. As I said, we are up to 2019. Frankly, I mean, that's the last one I'm going to recommend. Is that tag team match from 2017 and then the Becky Lynch-Sasha Banks match from 2019. We did have a Hell in a Cell last year with 3 matches. The Roman Reigns Jey Uso one was very good, but I'm not going to say it was an all-time great Hell in a Cell match. And as part of that Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso multi-month thing they did, I feel like they had better matches. I feel like the Cell kind of constricted what they could have done and should have done to each other. Honestly, I would have liked to see Roman Reigns and Jey Uso in like a Falls Count Anywhere environment. see them go all over the arena. Reigns and Kevin Owens had a match like that a few months later. I think it would have been more interesting to see Jey and Roman have that. Jey Uso's kind of a high flyer guy. I think him being able to scale stuff backstage, jump around different levels of parking garages and stuff, that I think would have suited Jey Uso very well as a wrestler. The Hell in a Cell thing, I am going to note it for historical accuracy because it was the first Hell in a Cell match that was competed under I Quit rules. Instead of pinfall or submission, your opponent had to say I quit. So there you go. These are my Hell in a Cell recommendations. As I said, that's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Hell in a Cell matches. Threw in a couple others of historical significance. But when it's all said and done, you are free to pick your own. You're free to tell me in the comments if you thought I skipped over some all-time classics. Hey, let's have a discussion. Just remember the rules of Roulette Productions. Keep it constructive, keep it respectful, and remember, just because I didn't pick your favorite doesn't mean it's a bad Hell in a Cell match. It's just not my favorite. We all have different tastes. That's why the good Lord makes more than one flavor of ice cream. Sometimes makes it with different ingredients, so even people that can't eat dairy can have ice cream. Because we all are unique, and we're all different. But one thing we can agree, none of us wants to get inside Hell in a Cell. So let's cap it off with the hard statistics. The Undertaker has had the most appearances with 14, followed by Triple H with 9. The most number of victories has been The Undertaker with 8, although he has also had 6 losses. So he does not have the best percentage. The best winning percentage, discounting people that have only appeared in 1, because that's kind of cheating, is a 3-way tie between Batista, Brock Lesnar, and Kevin Owens at 2-0 apiece. So, there you go. The worst Hell in a Cell record would be Mankind Cactus Jack Mick Foley, who has had 4 appearances inside of Hell in a Cell and has not won any of them, having lost 3 and having won no contest. Although Shane McMahon at a simple 3-0 isn't much better. And I know I didn't call out any specific Shane McMahon matches because, as I kind of said before, I respect Shane for what he does because as the son of the owner, he doesn't have to ever wrestle any matches, never did. But the guy likes being a bit of a daredevil. Doesn't make him a great wrestler. Still, we're going to end on a positive note, and that is, as I said, the 2021 edition of WWE Hell in a Cell pay-per-view is only days away, and that means, woo! We got a chance for some more history to be made. We got a chance for new favorites to make my list and your list. So watch it, and then come back next Friday for another edition of the Friday Ramblings, because there's always more pop culture to talk about. Bye-bye, folks.